Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of the book of Shmuel Aleph, that is the first book of Samuel, and we continue reading. We are now up to chapter 7. And at chapter 7, in the last few chapters, we have learned of the fallacy of placing faith in an idol or an item, a physical item, even whether that item was the statue of Dagon for the Philistines, whether it was the Ark of the Covenant for the Philistines when they had it, or the Ark of the Covenant for the Israelites when they had it. To the extent that they put faith in the item, in the thing, they ended up suffering unfortunate calamities as a result. Now we will learn from Shmuel, from Samuel, in today's chapter, that if one puts his or her, the people put their faith in God and not in the ark, that is when they will be saved. So, Vayavo Anshe Kiryat Yarim. We last learned that the ark was in Beit Shemesh, and the people of Beit Shemesh called the people of Kiryat Yarim, saying that we need to get rid of this. It's causing too much trouble for us. They had 50,070 people die from it, so we need to put it somewhere appropriate. So Vayavo Anshe Kiryat Yarim, the people of Kiryat Yarim came, Vaya'alu et Aron Adonai, and they raised up. In other words, they brought it from the valley where Beit Shemesh was up to Kiryat Yarim. Vayaviu Oto, and they brought it El Beit Avinadav, to the house of Avinadav Bagivah, who was on a hill in a high place. Viet Elazar Beno, and Elazar his son, Kiddishu. They made him holy. Holy meaning, as Rashi explains, making something holy means to set it aside for a special purpose. In this case, they gave Elazar, the person, a special assignment, Lishmor et Aron Adonai, to guard and to take care of and to be the keeper for the Aron, for the Ark of God. Vayehi, and it was Miyom Shevet Aron B'Kiryat Yarim, from the day that the Aron, that the ark resided in Kiryat Yarim, Vayirbu Hayamim, many days passed that it stayed there. Vayiyu Esrim Shana, and it remained there for 20 days. Vayinohu Kol Beit Yisrael Acharei Adonai, and the people of Israel, Vayinohu, the best translation for that would be, and they yearned after God. They desired to worship God. Now, Rashi points out that this desire came from the fact that they are now finally being led by Shmuel, by Samuel is the leader, and he is leading the people to follow God, not to follow the ark, but to follow God. And the people are starting to express a desire to find the proper path because of Shmuel's leadership. So, Vayomer Shmuel kol Beit Yisrael, and Shmuel then said to the entire people of Israel, Lamar, as follows: Im b'chol levavchem, if this is true, that with your entire hearts, Atem shavim el Adonai, you are returning to God, Hasiru et Elohei hanechor mitochachem, then how do you demonstrate this desire to return to God and God alone? You have to get rid of all of these idols that you have, get rid of all of these foreign gods from among you, get rid of everything. V'ha Ashtarot, and the Ashtarot. Ashtarot are the female consorts of the various Canaanite gods. It's the same word as Ishtar or Ashtaroth, are often fertility goddesses, and you have to get rid of all that stuff. And then what do you do? V'yachinu levavchem el Adonai, and then you have to set your hearts on God. V'ivduhu levado, and worship Him alone. This notably, after all these chapters, the ark this, the ark that, the ark, Shmuel says, if you want God, you need to worship Him alone. He doesn't say a word about the ark. And then V'yatzil etzchem miyad plishtim, then He will save you from the Philistines. If you want to be saved, you must turn your hearts towards God. Vayasiru b'nei Yisrael et ha'ba'olim mi'ato Ashtarot, and the people of Israel listened to Shmuel's advice, and they got rid of all of these idols, the Baal idols and the Ashtarot, Vayavdu et Adonai levado, and they then went and worshipped and served God alone, only God. Vayomer Shmuel, and Shmuel said, Kivtzu et kol Yisrael ha-mitzpata. May the entire people of Israel gather at Mitzpah, et palel ba'adchem el Adonai. And in other words, as a movement, a demonstration of loyalty to God. And remember, this is at Mitzpah, not at the location where the ark is, but we will gather there together at Mitzpah. Mitzpah is a famous place from the book of Joshua. Et palel ba'adchem el Adonai, and I will then pray on your behalf, on the behalf of the people, to God. Vayikpetzu ha-mitzpata, and the people gathered at Mitzpah. Vayish avu mayim, and they drew water. And Vayishbechu lifnei Adonai, and they poured the water before God. Now, what is this pouring of water? And here I'm going to rely on the Targum Yonatan, which is raised by Rashi. V'shafichu libahon b'tiyuvta kimaya kadam Hashem. They poured out their hearts as water before God. Shifchi kamayim libech. Pour out like water. Pour your heart out like water. So according to the Targum Yonatan, it doesn't mean necessarily that they drew water, but it means that they poured out their hearts before God. Or it could mean that they actually did pour water to demonstrate and to symbolize pouring their hearts out in humility before God. Vayatzumu bayomahu. So this was a symbol of humility before God. Humility being the key to worshiping God. Arrogance being the flaw which leads to idolatry. The idea that people can control the gods is the arrogance that leads to idolatry. The idea that humility before God and acceptance of God is what brings one close to the truth, and truth without humility is impossible. Vayatzumu bayomahu, and they fasted on that day. Vayomer sham, and they said altogether, Chatanu l'Adonai, we have sinned before God. Vayishpot Shmuel et bnei Yisrael b'mitzpah. And Shmuel, this word Shmuel, often the word lishpot we've been translating as to judge, but as we've seen in the book of Judges, of Shoftim, and in this book and throughout, that just really just means he led them, he taught them, he led them at Bnei Yisrael, the people of Israel, b'mitzpah, at Mitzpah. Now, so this Mitzpah was a religious event, a religious gathering, and of course, the Philistines decided to take advantage of this. So Vayishma'u Philistim, the Philistines heard, Ki et kapzu b'nei Yisrael ha-mitzpata, that all of the people of Israel had gathered at Mitzpah. So Vaya'alu sarnei Plishtim el Yisrael, and the chieftains, the heads of the Philistines, came up against the Israelites. They marched to wage war. They said, we got them all gathered in one spot, let's take care of them now. Vayishma'u b'nei Yisrael, and the people of Israel heard, Vayiru mipnei Plishtim, and they were afraid. They were scared of the Philistines, especially considering all that they've been through. And as we've read in the last few chapters, Vayomu b'nei Yisrael al Shmuel, and the people of Israel said to Shmuel, Al tacharesh mimenu, don't leave us alone. Don't forget about us, Mizook el Adonai. Don't forget about crying to God, Eloheinu, our God, V'yoshienu mi'ad Plishtim, so that He may save us from the hands of the Philistines. We need your help. Help us. Vayikach Shmuel tilei chalav echad, and Shmuel took a young lamb. That tilei chalav literally means that it was still nursing lamb. Vayaleu olah kolil Adonai, and he brought it as a complete sacrifice to God. Vayizak Shmuel el Adonai b'ad Yisrael, and Shmuel cried out to God on behalf of the people of Israel. Vaya'aneu Adonai, and God answered his prayer. Of note, Shmuel did not ask for anyone to go get the ark, but rather he prayed to God. Vayihi Shmuel ma'aleha olah, and it happened as Shmuel was bringing the sacrifice to God, Uflishtim nigshu lamilchama b'Yisrael, and the Philistines were approaching in full battle formation the people of Israel. Vayareim Adonai b'kol gadol, and God shook them up with tremendous sound, tremendous noise. Bayomahu, on that day, I'll push them against the Philistines. Vayihumeim, and he confused them and frightened them and shook them up. Vayinogfu lifnei Yisrael, and they were struck down before the people of Israel. So through some miracle, they got frightened by this tremendous amount of noise and a stormy noise of some sort. It got them all confused and shook them up, scared them. and they ran by Yetzu Anshe Yisrael min Mitzpah, and once the Philistine camp was shaken up, now the Israelites left Mitzpah in attack mode. Now that the Philistines were running, they went after them. By Yerdefu et Plishtim, and they chased after the Philistines. Vayakum ad mitachas l'beis kar, and they struck them down and kept chasing them until they reached someplace below Beit Kar, someplace. Vayikach Shmuel even achas, and Shmuel took one stone. Vayosem bein ha-mitzpah uvein ha-shein, and he took it and put it in a place between Mitzpah and Shein. Presumably this was some place where the fighting had been. Vayikro et Shmuel even ha-azer, and he called this the stone of the help, right? Vayomer, and he said, Ad heina azaranu Adonai. Until this point, God has helped us. Right? Now this Even Ha'azer, this stone of help, is a stone that Shmuel places after the battle as a symbol to commemorate the fact that God has helped us until this point. But if you remember, there was an Even Ha'ezer that the people relied upon before the original battle with the Philistines a few chapters ago, where the Israelites lost terribly and lost a lot of people because they had faith in that stone as a representation of God, and the stone didn't help them. But over here, Shmuel is teaching them that it's okay to put up a memorial, something to remind you, something physical to remind you of something that God has done, as long as you don't have faith in that in the past, right? As long as you're not having faith in that item to be some kind of superstitious thing that's going to somehow save you. Only God saves you. And until this point, it has been God that is helping us. Shmuel emphasizes that, not the stone. And the Philistines were subdued, and they no longer breached the borders of the people of Israel to come against them. And the work of the hand of God was against the Philistines all of the days that Shmuel was in charge, all of the days that Shmuel was the leader. And those towns that had been taken by the Philistines from the Israelites were returned Israel back to the Israelites. Me'ekron v'ad Gat, from the city of Ekron to Gat v'ad Kavulan, and their boundaries. Hitzil Yisrael mi'ad Plishtim, the people of Israel took back from the Philistines. Vayhi Shalom bein Yisrael vein ha'amori, and there was also peace during the time of Shmuel between Israel and another one of their enemies, and that's the Amorites. Vayishbot Shmuel es Yisrael kol yimei chayav, and Shmuel was the leader of the people of Israel his entire life. V'halach midei shana b'shana, and every year he would go v'sovav Beit El v'hagilgol v'hamitzvah, and he would travel to these places, Beit El and Gilgal and Mitzvah, to teach, to lead, to bring the people, to inspire them. V'shafat es Yisrael et kol hamakomot ha'ela, and he ruled the people of Israel in all of these places. U'teshuvato haramata, and then after every year he would make his rounds. This is showing the signs of a good leader who goes out to the people, who sees the people where they are, visits them in their towns. But then he would eventually go home to Ramah, which is Kisham Beito, because that's where his house was. This is Ramah, where his mother Chana lived, if you remember, and Elkanah lived. This is where Shmuel's roots were, Visham Shafat es Yisrael, and from there was his seat from which he ruled the people of Israel. Vayiven Sham Mizbeach Ladonai, and he built there an altar to God. Remember, since the tabernacle in Shiloh was no longer, having been destroyed at the time when the ark was captured by the Philistines, so now it was considered acceptable to build altars to God in other places until there's eventually going to be another more permanent home for the tabernacle, or eventually the temple. But since now there was no permanent home, it was okay to build these altars and sacrifice on these altars, as Samuel had done earlier in this chapter and as Samuel had done now. So this is just a general review of Shmuel, of Samuel's successful leadership of the people, how he related to the people, the lessons that he taught the people, and this pretty much concludes the Shmuel chapter of leadership. Next, we're going to go on to the Shmuel's work on finding a successor, and how the leadership is going to pass, who the baton is going to pass from Shmuel. Shmuel is, not yet removed from the picture, that he still has more to do, but we just summarized his basic leadership. Thank you so much for studying chapter 7. Looking forward to studying chapter 8 and the rest of this book of Shmuel together.